Well, today everybody, in this video we're going to be talking about the Neural DSP Quad Cortex, and after owning this unit for over a year, I want to answer the question that is the title of this video, and that is the Quad Cortex worth it? Let's talk about it. So I have used this unit in so many different configurations. I've toured with For the Fallen Dreams, and this thing was in the rack. I've toured with Elijah, this thing was in the rack, and I just got off a tour, well, half a tour, with an artist by the name of Tommy Vex, and I used this very unit as a floor modeler. So I've had this thing using the amp models on board. I've been using the plugin compatibility feature. I've been using this thing for any sort of which way possible, and I feel as though, again, after having owned this thing for a year, I feel inclined to talk about it, share my findings, as well as I feel as though I've had the means to run this thing in a million different ways. So before we start talking about the Quad Cortex, the pros and cons, and what I think about owning this thing for a year, if you could please like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel, do all the YouTube things. It really helps out. I really sincerely appreciate it. Follow me on any sort of social media platform, and follow me on any sort of streaming platform so you can hear some of my own original music and hear some riffs that I create when recording with the Quad Cortex, for example. Thank you so much in advance. With that being said, let's talk about the pros and cons. First and foremost, I'm not a huge fan of the buttons on the Quad Cortex, and the buttons meaning the location and the lack of space between the buttons. And this was a problem that I found recently when touring with Tommy Vex, because again, I was using this modeler on a pedal board on the floor in front of me, and I was using it where I would step on different functions or different, effects and presets, etc. I wasn't having a computer do that. I was doing it myself manually, which I thoroughly enjoyed from a peace of mind standpoint. However, if I had a preset or if I had an effect on the top row, I really don't know if I would be able to grab it with my foot on the fly. So anytime I programmed any sort of like lo-fi effect or like a pitch shift or anything like that, I put it on the bottom row, the edge of the modeler. Nothing up here was ever programmed, and nothing was ever dialed in. And that's just a personal preference, and I'm not really sure how you can get away with, having all these buttons and not running the risk of having space. It's kind of like a first world problem. But with my sneakers or my boots, whatever I'm wearing on stage, I feel as though it could get a little crowded if I'm really trying to like press some of these buttons up here, especially on the fly in a live setting in real time. I do want to take a break real quick to talk about today's sponsor, and that is Sweetwater. Now, Sweetwater is your one-stop shop for all your gear needs. Anybody who's been following me or my channel certainly knows of Sweetwater, but if you're new here or if you don't know what Sweetwater is, it's a giant online retailer for musical equipment. And today they're asking me to share with you all the HOSA Edge guitar cable. I was using another one of these on tour with Tommy Vex just this past week, and I was using this cable going in between my wireless and the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. I'm actually taking this very cable in my hand right here, as well as my other one that I was using on tour, and I'm getting on a plane Saturday morning to go to LA and play a Flyin date with Elijah, and I'm bringing both of those cables, and both of those cables will be running a tuner to stage. I've had the means to travel with my own copy and tour with them and throw them around, in the back of a big giant, trailer when traveling from place to place in my tour bus. I really love these cables, and they're very paramount for my live setup. I'll put a product link down below in the description of this video, as well as the pinned comment, if you guys want to scoop up one of these cables yourself. And if you use my link, it helps out the channel, and you are supporting a brand and a company that is directly affiliated with me and a piece of gear that I support and use for real. And last but not least, throughout the duration of this video, I'm using my HOSA cable from my guitar into the Neural DSP Quad Cortex. The The next negative of the Quad Cortex is not all of the Neural DSP plugins have the compatibility with the Quad Cortex yet, which is kind of really not fair to the Quad Cortex because we're talking about like almost apples and oranges here, but I have to bring it up as a talking point. For example, I wanted to use the Fortin Nameless X suite live when I was out on tour in the fall. However, it was not available yet, but the Gojira X was available. So, you know, it wasn't exactly my first choice in terms of a plugin, but I was able to use a plugin that I'm very familiar with and have the tones uploaded onto my own Quad Cortex, and I could use an X series archetype on the Quad Cortex, which is one of the features that was promised in the very beginning in the inception of the Quad Cortex. And like I said, it's not really fair to the Quad Cortex to hold, this unit to that standard, but also at the same time, it's like, I would love to use the Nameless X suite live. That's my favorite Neural DSP plugin. It's been my favorite off and on, but here in present day in 2024, almost in 2025, that amp sim's almost 6 years old now, or it's over 6 years old now, and it's still my favorite. And I would just love to use those tones on the Quad Cortex. I'm sure one day soon, yes, but for right now, it's unavailable. And yeah, long story short, man, I just wish we could use all of the archetypes and all the plugins and have that compatibility function with all the plugins on the Quad Cortex. With that being said, there are so many pros with this unit, and it is still to this day my go-to and my favorite unit to travel with, to tour with, to record with, and to feel inspired with. The obvious pro right now here in 2024 is the plugin compatibility. I know it was in my negatives, but also too at the same time, we're starting to slowly see the different archetypes have the compatibility function to where you can use the plugin tones on the Quad Cortex. And I'll say it right here, again, the Nameless suite, that's my favorite one. So when that does happen, the idea and the thought of having a Nameless tone on my Quad Cortex with like the literal Nameless plugin sound on this thing makes me feel so inspired, and I can't wait to play it live at like a House of Blues or something like that. It's gonna be so sick. I can't wait for that. Another pro with this thing that I've said since the beginning, since I got it, and it's very true to this day, and that is this thing sounds insane. It is, in my opinion, the best modeler out there in terms of sonic quality and sonic goodness. I love it so much. I can't convey it right now in this video, but I will tell you, man, having played this thing all last year and all this year in a different venue all over North America, whether it's United States or Canada or wherever, just as soon as it was my turn to sound check and I just start chugging with this thing, it sounds absolutely monstrous. It was quite amazing playing like the casino up in Bethlehem, PA, and sound checking with this thing, or playing like House of Blues, Las Vegas, and sound checking with this thing. Having this thing come in through front of house and a really nice sound system and a really great PA, it's so inspiring and it's so fun to play live with. As well as recording too. I mean, my most recent song that I put out called Everyone Has a Plan was recorded in drop C with the Solar guitar, and this thing was the actual tones on that recording, on that tune. Another thing I love with the Neural DSP Quad Cortex is the portability. It's kind of obvious, and I shouldn't spend too much time on this point, but this thing is very, very compact and rather small. Whenever I fly, I always put this thing on my back in my backpack, and then I take my backpack off and then I put it underneath the seat on the airplane. So like I never have to check this thing, I never have to put it in storage above in the overhead compartments. This thing just stays on my back and then stays at my feet when I'm on the plane, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with this thing in about 48-50 hours when I fly to LA for the gig. So yeah, portability is great, man. It's just so easy to travel with this thing. And last but not least, my final positive with the Quad Cortex right now is it is the quote-unquote industry standard. Let me explain. Now, I'm going to preface this and be devil's advocate to my own point here, and that is you should never really follow the crowd. You should always do what you think is best for yourself. I really don't think you should just buy things or do things because it's popular or what other people are into, truthfully. However, that being said, any sort of live gig that I've been a part of, as well as many other touring acts that I have the opportunity to play with and tour with, everybody seems to be using Quad Cortexes. And I bring this up as a positive that this is the industry standard because a lot of bands and a lot of acts have their own dedicated Quad Cortexes attached to the actual entity. Meaning, like a band, for example, will have the band Quad Cortex, and whoever's filling in or playing that day can just plug into this thing. So I find that incredibly cool, for lack of a better description, because I'm very fortunate enough to where like I'm traveling and bouncing around from gig to gig, and I've been hired for 3 different gigs in the matter of like 9 months this year: March, April, and then October. So I've had to learn like 60 or some songs and 3 different touring acts, and every single one of those acts I've had the Quad Cortex, and or the other players have been using Quad Cortexes. So again, it's like the industry standard, so like it makes me feel confident and comfortable that like as time goes on, more and more bands and acts and people who want to hire me, whether it's the same ones I'm with now or whatever. My point is like it feels great that I could just fly into a gig, fly into a date. There's a Quad Cortex on the scene more often than not, and then I can just plug in and go. And if I need to manipulate and operate this thing, I know I can do it with ease because I've had so much familiarity with this thing. And everybody else that plays guitar does as well. So, to answer my question in the wrap up of this video, is the Quad Cortex worth it? For me, absolutely. I've had this thing paid off for quite some time. I did like the used like monthly payment thing on Reverb. I never did that before, but I was in a pinch back in like August of 23 because I need one of these. I got hired last minute. Anyway, now that's all paid off, now I've laid out all the pros and cons and X, Y, and Z, this thing is just so awesome. So I hope you can take something from my video and maybe you can implement it into your own gear decisions, and maybe you can learn something from me. And yeah, just hope you guys enjoyed, at the very least, hearing me talk about my modeler, my touring unit, my Neuro DSP Quad Cortex. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Like, share, comment, follow me on any sort of platform, social media, streaming, whatever. Let me know what you guys think of my video. Let me know what you guys think of my opinions. And with that being said, everybody, I'll see you guys in a video very, very soon. Later.